Hi everyone, I'm Anthony O'Flynn, coming to you from the Sunshine Coast here in Australia. This video will be on the current state of the awakening community in Australia specifically, and the lessons that we are learning individually and collectively through this awakening process. So I guess it's important to take stock of where we are now, but specifically where we've come from to evaluate the situation that's unfolding here in Australia. This galvanisation of people around the country to express their concern, their outrage at all the abuses of the governments and authorities during the pandemic in terms of freedoms, liberties, human rights, was a catalyst for pouring of this outrage, and of course related to ongoing issues and all the other topics that's been covered pretty much daily by people in the awakening community. And I think many people were surprised to see, at least in the beginning, just how many people there were who were, in terms of their understanding of what was going on, and also at a global level, were on the same page. And so that common bond forged a lot of unity, a lot of goodwill, and was a lot of inspiration for many people to get involved and to get engaged in various forms of activism. And then this grew as the lockdowns went on, as the abuses intensified, and as the level of concern rose. And then this was even more intensified by the hope of the federal election and the outcome of that, which was very disappointing for many of the people in the awakening community, the freedom movement, this umbrella. So everyone knows what I'm talking about when I use these terms. And now many people are beginning to question the efficacy of the various methods of activism and the results, particularly in the last month or two, and obviously in the short term, medium term after the federal election. In regard to Victoria, this levels of activism will probably intensify and then obviously drop off after the state election in November, regardless of the result. And I think that it's healthy to reflect on the criticisms that many people are having of the lack of results, or the lack of cohesion, or the lack of unity. So I'm not going to be in this video going into the gutter like a lot of other people are more than happy to do, and throw people under the bus on social media and so on. For whatever reason, I'm not defending anyone, I'm not attacking anyone, I'm not supporting anyone in this way individually, and I'm not denigrating anyone individually. It's more this video in the context of an observation of where things are and what the way forward is. Now, I've made videos in more detail of this, of my own solution-based understanding of the situation that we are, in terms of what the power structure is on this planet, and specifically Australia. And and my model is based on the accumulation of power, and many people in the awakening community actually have a lot of issues with power personally. And unfortunately, this leads to the fact that many people are actually disempowered personally. And if there's that collective, and if everyone's plugging into that state, then you create a collective energy of disempowerment, which is therefore using the freedom movement and the events in the world as a vehicle to experience this disempowerment, this frustration, this rage, this anger externally. Now, many people would overlook some of these personal issues and issues of psychology and psyche and ask the relevance of how that is significant to the awakening, the global awakening. Well, this is everything. This is the whole point. And as long as we're stuck in the state of disempowerment and we're not aware of our own limitations, our own shortcomings, our own shadow, we're unable to contribute in a positive way to the collective. And this is part of the reason why many of the leaders have been called in question, the current crop of leaders, if you want to use that word, leaders, activists, whatever. And also the need for people, or the requirement that people have a leader in the first place. As a person, and you know, the leader should be your own consciousness, your own heart, your own soul, ultimately. But because of this disempowered state, people are looking for an external saviour, which obviously is going to be a myth. And this is the ultimate, obviously this is the frustration that people are having with the leadership, accusing people of just basically trying to make money, all this sort of thing. And at the same time failing to understand that if someone is going to be involved in activism that full time, that they need to make money. They're not different to anybody else. And yet the outrage of real issues and real wastes of money, of things like, for example, Anastasia Palaszczuk, the Queensland Premier, she spent over $100 million on airplanes, jets actually, just jets, for her ministers just a couple of weeks ago, and there was barely a blip on the radar. And yet there's this continual outrage by people that someone is actually trying to make money to live on and contribute positively. So I'm not going to speak about specific examples or specific people, but the unconscious rhetoric in regard to this is unhelpful, and it's unrealistic. And then you look at the contributions from lobby groups to the major political parties. Do some research into that and see the millions of dollars that's been funded by these lobby groups, whether it's the mining industry or whatever industry, to achieve outcomes politically. And that's why my contention is that in order to accumulate power, and people are sort of embarrassed about talking about this or shy about talking about this, this is exactly the outcome of, or the goal of the, oh, there's some hares running around, 2 of them, chasing each other. This is actually the exact outcome of the freedom movement, is to accumulate power. And until that is acknowledged and understood and actioned, then there won't be any real going forward, until there is an understanding that power can be a very good thing when it's used positively, when it's used for the benefit of all. So for this reason, as I define it, and there are sub aspects to these points, there are 3 types of power. There is social power, there's political power, there's economic power. And really, with a huge amount of one of those in the triad of that, in those 3 different types, if you accumulate a huge amount of power with one, then you can affect that going into the other 2 aspects, the other 2 components of this triad of power. Now, what the freedom movement is largely trying to do in terms of the protests and the protest movement is actually trying to accumulate what I refer to as social power, because there is this mass number of people, it's a sheer number of people, perhaps not having any political power, they just have the vote, the one vote at the elections, and maybe not having so much economic power. This isn't really a problem if the social power is colossal. Now, the strategy of doing this in terms of this aspect of social power, in terms of protest movement, is only going to be effective with huge numbers. And of course, we've seen around the world throughout the centuries, throughout history, when there is a certain type of revolution, there was always a lot of people involved, a lot. And that doesn't mean it's violent, that doesn't mean it's peaceful. I'm just talking about in the context of scale and scope, and that's what needs to be appreciated. So what precedes these mass movements in terms of social power is a catalyst, like an event, which many people think, well, if this didn't occur during the pandemic and the abuse of human rights and so on, and the segregation and all the rest of it, the discrimination, then that'll never happen. Well, the reality is that the crises that is coming are much bigger than what we've faced so far, and much more dire, and the scale and scope is bigger. And that will galvanise more people in time to go down this avenue of accumulating social power, as I refer to it. And what's missing behind the freedom movement is a deeper, more powerful strategy and a long-term plan to start to accumulate these various aspects of power, and to do it for the greater good. Because this is the essence of how this reality is structured, through power. What do you think a war is based on? It's based on military power, or economic sanctions, which was, an easier way to coerce other countries and so on. Economic sanctions, like we're seeing now. That's power. That's power. To have a huge budget for defence. That's power. That's military power. To have natural resources which you can turn on and turn off and not sell or distribute to other nations. That's power. To have a huge number of members in a political organisation that will vote in a certain way. That's power. And until the awakening community recognise the essence of this force of the universe, then it will be very difficult to create systemic change. So people are calling for unity and calling for a greater, less division and all the rest of it. Well, personally, I can't see that happening at the moment. Some of the criticisms are with good reason of things that's going on, of some of the people. But the thing is that people won't unite ultimately behind a leader that is of a lower consciousness as we go into this new paradigm. So the stage that we're in now, as the way I personally see it, is just a growing pains. I don't see that you're able to tackle this very, very well orchestrated power structure and challenge it and oppose it, and then perhaps transcend it or replace it, or use the same system to get better representation, better government, better distribution of the resources and all that sort of thing. It's not going to happen in 2 or 3 years. It's just not even possible. Not enough people are engaged in the political process, are taking an interest in the matters of the world. A lot of people are choosing to bury their head in the sand and so on. And ultimately that's their choice, but that will have an effect. And the thing to understand is that the protest movement is a very blunt tool. I mean, to simply walk around the streets with a sign and yell slogans and chant things, I'm not against that in any way, as long as it's legal and lawful, but it's limited what it can achieve with small numbers. And with small numbers, the media always like to jump on that and just show how much of a minority group it is. And then also, if there's division and so on, they like to show that as well, that these people are like a fringe minority who are a little bit unhinged and are really not mainstream Australia. And we saw that by and large with the outcome of the last federal election. So it can't be underestimated, or this lack of awareness of how this whole subculture is perceived by mainstream Australia. And really, as a stealth method of accumulating power, or appeared a stealth method, is the success of the Teals in the last federal election, that should be something of an inspiration to the awakening community, because in my view that strategy was extremely well executed, and although their independence, I won't go into that, the profiles were good, the selection of candidates was good, the policies was good, the branding was good, the marketing was good, everything, it ticks so many boxes that should be, not specifically them, but those qualities is what are necessary to create power at a political way. So until there is this understanding that this limitation of social power in terms of protests, in terms of numbers, is understood, then the effects will be minimal. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't have its place, but the outcome will not be what people are looking for. And this is the frustration where people are at the moment. But beyond that, it's the leadership basically that is necessary to address. Because in my book, Paradigm Shift, The Global Awakening of Humanity 2020 to 2040 by me, I address this using the very, very excellent example of the George Orwell book Animal Farm, and which is a metaphor for the Russian Revolution and also the reign of Stalin. And when you read it with that understanding, you can see, in terms of the argument that I build in the book, and this is basically, directed at the awakening community, the truth movement. And this is the really key point of this whole video, is that unless there is a change of consciousness, then we will simply replace one system with another. And this is indicated in the Russian Revolution, where it goes from the reign of the Tsars, which is in essence the royal family, to the overthrowing of the Tsars and replaced by the Marxist doctrine, and the ultimate failing of this doctrine itself, which I won't go into now. But the point is, in Animal Farm, is that all the animals have their various roles on the farm. But what really happens is that nothing changes, because there is no real transformation in motivation, actually. There is a accumulation, or a need for accumulation of power, and that's what is perpetuated, without looking after all the animals as it would be claimed. For example, the commandments of the farm are gradually altered, and I quote, "All animals are equal," which is straight out of Marxist doctrine, is changed to "all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others." And that's a reference to the pigs being the leaders and the other animals being beneath the pigs. And this is a reflection of this lack of inner transformation, of inner growth, to grow into, to be a leader that will be acknowledged by the community, or accepted, and to be in a state of integrity and all these sorts of things. And I think that people at the moment are unrealistic in their expectation of the leadership of these people, who have been very courageous and very selfless in many cases, and has cost them a lot. And yet some people are just intent on tearing these people down at all costs, without any real respect or appreciation of what they have contributed. And the way I see it is that this entire movement is in a state of metamorphosis, actually. That this whole process is gaining momentum in more subtle ways, because I really do think that there's many people in Australia now who are really concerned about the future, are really concerned about the way the country's going at many different levels: economically, politically, socially, environmentally, everything. Education system, the medical system, the legal system, everything. but they don't really know what to do about it. They like to get involved in some way, but there needs to be a solution-based process where people are coming together through consensus. And we're yet to see that, but I'm confident we will. But where we're at now, it's really growing pains. It's really getting to the point where, you know, perhaps these people who are very vocal at the moment, they won't be. It's like a hobby for them, or it's a money-making exercise, whatever it is. They won't be around to partake in the future. In fact, in my view, the leaders of the new paradigm, the real leaders of the new paradigm, not even on the radar yet, actually, with what's going to come, most of them. So that's something to consider, that this is a big process, and it's actually going in the context of what needs to happen and what needs to transpire. It's not going so badly as what many people would think. And again, I'm not speaking individually, I'm speaking about the collective movement here. And really, this final quote I want to read from Animal Farm is the real brilliant one for me, that says, "The creatures outside look from pig to man, and from man to pig, and pig to man again, but it was already impossible to say which was which." By George Orwell. And of course, if there are people who are so-called grifters making money, then eventually that will become clearer, their motivations, their intentions, and they'll be superseded by other leaders and so on, who are more credible, who are more humanitarian in their nature, who are more selfless. So it's a process, and people will be found out, and people will be called out, and people will be will go through this transformation one way or another, is the way I see it. So I think that that this model is critical to understand, and that in order to have success accumulating social power, there needs to be a lot of social power accumulated. It's not just a little bit. It's like a blunt tool, protests. It can be effective in gaining traction to spread the awareness of certain topics, certain issues, but we are in for much bigger problems than the ones we've faced so far, and where we're going. And in my view, this will be the catalyst for a much deeper awakening. The awakening is only going one way. There may be less people going to certain meetings or whatever. That's not a parameter that I would pay too much attention to in the short to medium term. But the transformation of human consciousness and the need for us to all to grow and be the best version of ourselves is where the gold is, and that's where the actual shift will come from, the actual paradigm shift will come from. It's not just replacing one system with another, with a corrupt leader with another who goes down the path of materialism or whatever, or vanity or ego. I mean, that will not be allowed to occur from a universal process. So I think we need also to cut people some slack. A lot of people under a lot of pressure. We're all doing the best we can. We've all got various trials and challenges going through this, and it would be a little bit pertinent to tend to our own garden and sort ourselves out before we put all our energy into focusing on what other people are doing. What are we contributing to the awakening? How are we helping humanity blossom? How are we making a positive impact in our world? Even if it's just in our daily life. And it's not always easy. You might have to deal with very difficult situations and so on, but that's really the goal. It's that complicated and it's that simple. So that's really everything I wanted to say, at least in this video. And I just hope that people can find some peace through these times, actually, and and try to see sometimes that the frustration is not with other people, it's actually with yourself and perhaps your own life, and to become conscious of this external projection, because when we do that, that's when we start to become much more empowered at a personal level and start to hold ourselves more accountable for our own limitations and errors and so on. So in this way we can thrive and be an asset to the collective, rather than just simply putting all this anger out into the world. And it's not always easy. It's a very challenging time, but because of this, the payoff is big, the evolution is fast. If we're choosing this, if we're really sincere about this, and also we get the opportunity to witness this spectacular awakening of human consciousness, which will be probably one of the greatest gifts of all of this lifetime. So thanks very much for watching. Check out my YouTube channel if you haven't seen it yet, and we live in epic times.